Hi, y'all. Have you ever been negatively impacted by the assumptions someone else has made about you? If so, tell us about it in the comments. We love hearing about your life and learning from you and how the topics we discuss impact you. Now, I believe all of us at some point in our lives are impacted by the assumptions others make about us. Sometimes that impact benefits us, and sometimes it hurts us or others. We all make assumptions, and the very first assumptions we make about a person or a situation come from an involuntary process in our brains. It's not something that we have complete control over, but ultimately, we can learn something from the assumptions we make, from the assumptions others make about us, and how to influence ourselves and others to begin to assume something different. So, let's head on over to the outdoor office and have a chat about assumptions. So I'm going to share with you a little about what we have learned about how assumptions impact our mental health and emotional health, how they impact our relationships, what they are, and what to do with them if you find they are getting in the way of you having fulfilling, meaningful relationships with yourself or others. First, let's talk about what assumptions are. So, to assume something means to take it for granted or without proof. We actually need assumptions to survive. Without assumptions, your ancestors would not have survived long enough to produce you. Assumptions come from a necessary and powerful survival mechanism that exists in all mammalian brains. The brain receives sensory input like a sight, a smell, a sound, or a sensation, and that input immediately travels to a part of the brain that makes a split-second decision about the input. It is so fast that it happens without our permission or awareness. In another split second, instructions are sent to other parts of our brain or body that tell us what to do with or about the sensory input we just received. We may have a thought or idea, a feeling or sensation, or a reaction like running, crying, or fighting. So this is how assumptions show up in our thoughts, beliefs, and feelings. They come through in what we say, how we react, the choices we make, in our body language, and in the emotions we experience. Having assumptions is nothing to be ashamed of. Every single mammal on this planet assumes. Assumptions are a very powerful, effective, and necessary tool. Assumptions serve a very important purpose: to keep you and your loved ones safe and alive. You would not have gotten as far as you have in life without them. In fact, it is likely that more often than not, assumptions have helped you more than they have hurt you. That might be a hard pill to swallow, but it might be true. I grew up hearing this saying about what happens when you assume, and maybe some of you have heard it too. It's very catchy and sticky, so I'm not going to repeat it because it is counterproductive to what we are learning here in this video. And if you haven't heard it, I don't want it to stick in your head and get in the way. Now, if you do know it, and you know what I'm talking about, I'm going to ask you to set that idea aside for the rest of this video. Assumptions tend to get a bad rap because of our brain's amazing capacity for focusing on the negative. We remember the times our assumptions have hurt us or how other people's assumptions about us have hurt us. So we take that information and we generalize that assumptions are bad. I want to propose to you that assumptions are not good or bad. They are neutral. It is what we choose to do with those assumptions that can be helpful or harmful. I'm going to tell you a personal story to demonstrate. But before I do, if you're getting value from what we're talking about so far, please go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It really goes a long way to making sure others see our content, and it gives us clues about what is useful to you and what's not. Okay, so sometimes assumptions make life more difficult or uncomfortable for us. When our brains collect enough information about a particular situation or kind of person or event, it likes to categorize it and fit it in a neat little box. That allows us to not have to expend much energy in making a choice about what to do with these certain types of information in the future. Then we can make a large, generalized assumption about something and have a quick fix or reaction to it that doesn't require a lot of energy in order to make ourselves feel safe or comfortable. This is how assumptions take past experiences and turn them into predictions about the future. For example, there are times in my life that someone will ask me a question, and I begin to have what we call a survival response. My body may begin to tremble, my hands get a little shaky, my voice cracks, my breathing becomes irregular or rapid, or sometimes it even stops. The cadence and rhythm of my speech changes, and I have trouble thinking, like it might speed up or get really erratic. And I have trouble thinking clearly and articulating my ideas and thoughts. It's very embarrassing, and I can come across as unconfident, fearful, mean, or even deceptive. Let's focus on why this reaction happens in me sometimes when someone asks me a question, and what role assumptions play in it. In those moments, my nervous system is taking cues from the part of my brain that has made an assumption about some kind of sensory input I have gotten about the question that is being asked, or about the way that the question is asked, or about the person who is asking the question, or maybe some other cue from the environment that I happen to be in at the time. Now, as a fully grown adult, my brain is making assumptions about the situation based largely on past experiences. Remember, our brains use assumptions to take past experiences and turn them into future predictions. So somewhere in my past, I had enough repeated experiences with being asked a question in a certain context or by a certain kind of person or in a certain way, where I then had to immediately defend myself or prepare myself to be frightened or hurt. Being questioned wasn't always a good experience for me, so sometimes with the right kind of sensory input, my brain and nervous system react under the assumption that it isn't a good experience now, or that I don't have what it takes to make it a neutral or positive experience now. So it sends signals to my body to begin preparing me to defend myself, run away, shut down, or appease the person by telling them what I think they want to hear. My heart rate increases, hormones like adrenaline and cortisol begin coursing through my body, causing my hands and legs to shake. My throat tightens up, causing my vocal cords to constrict and make my voice crack. My breathing stops or gets faster. My body often gets a freeze and a run/fight response at the same time. That happens. And more energy is put towards the systems that are going to mobilize me to either move rapidly or shut down, causing my more advanced cognitive processes like concrete and abstract thinking and speech to become slower or interrupted. Blood rushes to my face for some reason and makes my brow tight. My eyes narrow, causing me to look angry or mean. And the result of all of these turns me into a person who looks and acts much differently than she was just moments ago. Let me tell you, it is frustrating and exhausting. And in these moments, I do not like the assumptions I'm making about the situation, and I don't like how I am presenting as a result of them. And depending on how I choose to respond in the midst of these assumptions and their impact on my functioning, I can either rupture my relationships with others and myself, or I can give them a foundation to grow upon. Again, it's not based on the assumption, but based on how I respond. So, what can I do with these assumptions? And what can you do with assumptions when they don't seem to be helping you or others? So I'm going to break this down in 4 steps that might help you integrate your power of assumption as a force of good in your life. So the first one is to recognize and accept. Acknowledge to yourself that it is happening. Accept that it is happening. Fighting it or wishing it wasn't happening is going to cause more turmoil inside of you. Ignoring that it is happening may embolden and strengthen your body's responses in the future, making it more uncomfortable and uncontrollable for you. Just own it. Do it begrudgingly at first if you have to, but recognize it and accept it. Remind yourself that assumptions just happen. They just happen. They happen inside of everyone, and you are no exception. And if you can muster it, remind yourself that not all of your assumptions have resulted in negative experiences. All right, number 2, pause and get present. Take a pause. That might look like a deep breath if you can manage it, but it may look more like excusing yourself and taking a break, or asking for a moment to think about your answer. If you take a break, spend a few moments focusing just on your breathing, doing a little mindfulness exercise, or simply taking note of what is around you in the space you are in. If your nervous system and body are highly activated, you may not have a chance to take a breath or politely excuse yourself. Your body may immediately try to get you away or cause you to lash out verbally or physically. You may find yourself running away, fighting, appeasing, or completely shutting down, unable to speak or breathe or think. Now, if you're having a reaction that is this strong, it may benefit you to get professional help with this from a mental health professional who understands how trauma impacts people and manifests itself in these ways. Number 3 is move forward imperfectly. Imperfectly, not perfectly. This is a hard one for me because I'm a recovering perfectionist and I want to make sure I have it all figured out, understood, and perfectly scripted before I move on, especially when I am under this kind of stress. But I've learned the path toward integrating and harnessing of the power of assumption requires forward movement in imperfect ways. In my example, moving forward may look like me answering the question to the best of my ability, even though my voice may be cracking, and maybe even verbalizing that my body is having a strong response and I don't know why. But I'm going to answer as best as I can for now. It may also look like me taking a pause and saying, I don't know, if I don't know the answer, instead of making an answer up to try to appease the person. I may mention that my brain is freezing up on me, and I'm having trouble answering that right now, but I will come back to it later. All of these little movements forward are really difficult for me because, in my estimation, they require me to ask for grace from others in a moment when I am already feeling extra vulnerable. But that is exactly why we must move forward imperfectly, because This is where we build our ability to rewrite the assumption script about these situations. We may not stop our brain from assuming negativity or danger about the situation, but we can rewrite how we assume we are able to handle it. Instead of assuming I can't handle it or that it won't ever get better, I can begin to assume confidence to handle it, even imperfectly, and that it will be okay. Maybe not great, maybe not perfect, but okay. And at least not a danger to me or others. And the last one is to reflect and explore more in a safe or brave space. We prefer the term brave space over safe space because the effort needed to reflect and explore these kinds of things doesn't always feel that comfortable or safe. And we find that many times people confuse safe space with a space where they don't have to feel any discomfort or have their thoughts, ideas, and beliefs challenged. Alternatively, a brave space allows you to take some risks, be vulnerable, and receive honest and helpful feedback meant to help you grow without causing you harm, with the right dose of questioning and challenging needed to help you integrate new learning. This can be done with another person or by yourself. Reflect on what happened. Try to take an objective 30-foot view of the situation. If you were observing and describing what you were experiencing as someone else who could see and feel what you felt, what would you have seen? What would you have heard? And what would you have noticed? Try this exercise. You can say it or you can write it down. I noticed, and then note what sounds you heard. I noticed Angela asked the question, why did you do it that way? I noticed her voice was smooth and that she ended the question with a slightly higher note in her voice. I heard another person make a sound like clearing their throat. I noticed, and then note what you saw. Try to remain objective. I saw Angela raise her hand. I saw her sit up straight and raise her body a couple of inches off the chair. I saw Angela's eyebrows raise and then lower and her eyes narrow. If you find yourself making judgments about these observations, write them on the side or make a note of them in some way. Like, as I am describing this, I realize I am taking her actions to mean that she is challenging me or angry about something I said. I'm also noticing that in the moment, all I could see was Angela. I was so focused on her that I don't recall what the other people were doing or who cleared their throat, even though there were only 2 other people in the room. Keep doing this exercise about what you smelled, what bodily sensations you felt, or what emotions you felt. Now, once you have all of this noted, you can ask yourself, what about this situation may have caused my body to respond the way it did? Now, explore. What assumptions did I make? For example, I assumed Angela was angry or kind of aggressively asking that question. And then go back to reflect. Reflect how that assumption impacted your brain and nervous system response. Go back to explore. Explore some different ideas of how you would like to respond to a similar situation and assumptions in the future. This step could get endlessly long and complicated doing it alone or with a trusted friend. That is when the help of a professional can spare you a lot of time, agony, and confusion. Here is a bonus step for you. Repair. The step of repair can be one of the most powerful steps, but it's not something that we are always ready or able to do, which is why I added it kind of as a bonus step in this video. Repair means you go back and try again to respond the way you would have liked to respond, or to try again to do it better in the future. Sometimes that means we practice talking to ourselves a different way about it. So, for example, instead of telling myself, wow, you really blew that, you loser, I can say, okay, that was rough, but I got through it and I can learn a lot from it. If I had a reaction where I ran away without explanation, or I argued or fought or did something I'm feeling guilty about, then I can go to the person or people involved and I can apologize. And I can practice something else. I can do or say what I wish I would have done or said instead, if the person or people are able to receive it. And if you find you're unable to complete any of these steps, you may want to find a professional who can support you and help you with them. So I want to know, did you learn anything you didn't already know about assumptions? And what assumptions did you have about assumptions before watching this video? Is there anything you disagree with, or something you know that we may not, that you'd like to share with us? Please let us know in the comments. We like learning from you as much as we like sharing what we have learned with you. Please share this video with a friend or family member you think might benefit from it or enjoy it. And until next time, take care of each other.